Welcome back to Study Hall, everyone, where we like to really dig deep into some complex issues.
Yeah,
And today is no exception.
definitely not.
We're tackling a pretty hot topic in education right now, a new executive order, and it's all about expanding something they're calling
Oh, yeah.
educational freedom.
I've heard about this.
We've got our work cut out for it.
Yeah, we do.
Today we're going to be dissecting this recent analysis
Oh,
of this order. We'll look at the order itself, too.
sounds like a lot.
It is, but it's also...
It's going to be fascinating.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we're here for, right?
Yeah.
We're going to unpack the good, the bad,
Benefits.
the benefits, the concerns.
And the drawbacks.
The drawbacks, yeah, all of it.
Okay, I'm ready.
But before we get lost in the weeds here, let's take a step back for a second.
Okay.
Think about your own experience,
Okay.
either personally or maybe someone you know.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever felt like the traditional school system just wasn't
Oh, yeah.
the right fit?
That's a question a lot of people are asking these days.
Yeah, and it's at the heart of this whole executive order.
It really is. And, the order itself, it points to some pretty stark statistics when you look at them.
Yeah.
70% of 8th graders, they just aren't proficient in reading.
Wow.
And 72% are behind in math.
That's a lot.
It is, and these are based on the National Assessment of Educational Progress.
Okay.
So, these numbers, they paint a picture.
Yeah.
It's not a great one when you think about our national competitiveness
Right.
and the struggles families face.
Trying to find the right fit.
Yeah, the right educational fit for their children.
Okay, so that's a pretty sobering tone, right?
It does.
The order's main aim seems to be,
It seems to be about control,
shifting more control to parents.
giving them more of a say.
Giving them more of essentially saying, you know what, parents,
The final say
they should have the final say.
in their child's education.
Yeah, in their child's education. The analysis we've got here, it points to some potential benefits,
Okay, like what?
like improved educational outcomes
Oh, interesting.
because of this increased,
Parental choice.
choice, right?
Yeah.
And competition among schools.
So the idea being that competition drives everyone to get better.
Exactly.
Okay. And
Competition could push all schools to be better.
it's an interesting way to look at it.
Yeah, applying a market-driven approach
A market-driven approach.
to education. But a key question here
The key question.
is whether this competition would really benefit everyone.
Yeah, well,
Or would it make existing inequalities even worse?
that's a really good point.
That's what we're here to find out, right?
That's what we're here to find out.
The analysis also highlights potential benefits for some specific groups.
Okay, which ones?
Low-income families,
Interesting.
military families,
Makes sense.
and children who are eligible for
Was it?
the Bureau of Indian Education schools,
Oh, BI schools.
BIE schools.
Yeah.
The order wants to give them
More flexibility.
more flexibility and options.
Right, more options.
Yeah. What do you think about the potential impact on these groups?
Well, I think the intent is good, right?
Yeah.
Wanting to support these groups, that's good.
Yeah.
But the devil's in the details.
Oh, always is.
Always is. We need to really examine closely
Yeah.
whether these benefits on paper
Right.
really translate to real-world improvements, especially for those in underserved communities
Yeah.
where they might not have a lot of quality options.
Okay, so let's talk about money,
Yeah, the financial side.
the financial side of things.
Okay.
What's really interesting here is that the order doesn't actually propose
New funding.
a ton of new funding.
Oh, wow.
It says, you know what?
Use what you got.
Use what you got. Let's use existing federal funds
Interesting.
more strategically
More strategically. Okay.
to support these school choice initiatives.
I see. So that's a big piece of it.
Yeah, and it makes sense.
It aligns with this administration's
Fiscal responsibility.
emphasis on fiscal responsibility.
Right.
There's always a but.
There's always a but.
Reallocating existing funds
Raises questions
is a question.
about potential cuts.
Yeah. What about these vital programs?
What could happen?
What are the unintended consequences?
Yeah, you start shifting resources around.
And it makes you wonder,
What gets left behind?
exactly, could some programs be disadvantaged?
It's the valid question.
It is. And what about new funding models?
Yeah.
Innovative models to support school choice without,
Hurting.
hurting public schools.
Right. It's not as simple as just moving money around.
It's not.
The analysis also brings up
Drawbacks.
some potential drawbacks.
Okay, a big one.
What happens to public schools?
What happens to public schools if their funding gets
Diverted.
diverted? Right.
Yeah.
Elsewhere, could this actually widen the achievement gap?
That's a big concern.
A legitimate one.
Could it make existing inequalities even worse?
It's possible.
Real possibility.
Public schools are so important.
Cornerstone.
The cornerstone of our education system.
They serve
Such a diverse...
everyone.
Yeah, such a diverse student population.
We have to consider what this means for them.
Absolutely, especially the schools that are already struggling.
Yeah, the ones that already have limited resources.
Yeah.
Another concern the analysis raises is about oversight.
Oversight.
Or a potential lack of it.
Lack of oversight.
For alternative schools, like private and charter schools,
Okay.
they often operate
With fewer
regulations.
Fewer regulations, right?
And that could lead to problems with quality and accountability.
Interesting. So, because...
Proponents of school choice,
Yeah,
they say competition will drive improvement,
right.
but how do we ensure
Yeah. How do you ensure
consistent standards?
across the board?
Yeah, across all these different educational settings.
Yeah, and the order itself doesn't really give us a clear plan for implementation.
Interesting.
So that just adds to the uncertainty. It
That's
talks
good.
about guidance and reports, but it doesn't get into specifics
About the funding.
about the funding, about how they'll ensure fair access for everyone,
For everyone, especially
those in rural areas.
yeah, those in rural areas.
Okay, let's look at the actual executive order itself.
Okay, let's do it.
We got it right here.
Right.
One thing that really jumps out
What's that?
is how it frames education as this essential thing.
Essential.
Absolutely essential
This.
to America's future success.
Oh, interesting.
And it emphasizes parental rights.
Parental rights.
Yeah, over and over again.
Interesting.
It basically says parents should have the final say.
The final say.
Yeah, in their child's educational journey.
So they're using very specific language
Yeah.
to frame the issue.
It's like they're trying to get people on board.
Trying to get people on board with their vision.
You hit the nail on the head. It's very strategic.
And it gets very specific too.
Oh, how so?
It tells specific departments like education,
Okay.
labor,
Mm-hmm.
health and human services,
All right.
defense, and interior
Wow.
to make plans.
To make plans and issue guidance.
And they have to do it quickly.
Quickly.
60 to 90 days.
That's a tight deadline.
It is a tight deadline. What do you think that means?
Well, it tells me they want to move fast.
They want to get this show on the road.
They want to implement this quickly,
Yeah.
but a rushed implementation, that could be a problem.
Yeah, what would go wrong?
You might overlook crucial details.
Right.
You might not address potential challenges, especially for those rural communities we talked about.
Exactly. And the order keeps coming back
That doesn't have
to
specific groups.
those specific groups we talked
The
about.
low-income families.
Yeah, the low-income families,
Military families.
military families,
Those
and those eligible for BI schools.
eligible for BAE schools, right?
They really want to expand their options.
It seems very targeted.
It does.
Like they're trying to build support for this order
Yeah.
by appealing to these different groups.
It makes you wonder, though, how these targeted initiatives
How do they?
fit in with the bigger goals of the order,
Yeah, and will they really address
the root of the problem.
the systemic issues that cause these educational disparities?
That's a great point before we move on.
Okay.
Let's put ourselves in someone else's shoes for a second.
Right.
Imagine a family in a rural area.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have a lot of educational options.
No, not a lot of choices.
Think about how this executive order might affect them.
Okay.
What are the good things that could happen?
The potential benefits.
Yeah, the potential benefits,
But also the challenges.
the potential drawbacks.
The potential drawbacks.
Yeah, the challenges they might face.
It really
And all
highlights
they highlight.
the fact that different communities have different needs,
Different circumstances.
different circumstances.
Yeah. And you can't just apply a one-size-fits-all solution.
Exactly.
And when you make these big, sweeping policy changes,
You could have unintended consequences.
you definitely could.
Some families in rural areas.
Yeah. Some might love having more choices,
They might.
but others might face challenges if they don't have the resources
The resources or the infrastructure.
or the infrastructure to support those choices.
That's a great point.
It's not just about giving people choices.
It's about making sure
It's about making sure.
those choices are meaningful
Yeah.
and that everyone can access them.
Accessible.
Yeah, accessible.
No matter where they live.
No matter where they live or how much money they have
Exactly.
or their background.
That's a crucial insight. It's not as simple as it seems.
It's not.
Yeah.
It's like we're trying to solve this.
Complicated.
Yeah, this really complicated equation.
With so many moving parts.
With all these different variables, you know?
And this executive order.
It's a game changer.
It's a potential game changer.
for how we think about,
Education in America.
yeah, how we approach education.
Especially with this focus on
Choice and competition.
choice and competition.
Yeah.
There's a but.
There's always a but.
There is.
Choice and competition.
It can be good.
They can be good.
They can lead to
innovation
and improvement.
But we can't let them.
Sacrifice.
Yeah, we can't sacrifice equity and quality.
Exact.
And one of the things they talked about in the analysis was this idea
The
of
cream skimming.
cream skimming,
I've heard of this.
where the higher performing students,
They're drawn to
let's say alternative schools,
alternative schools
leave the public
Amazing.
schools with higher concentration.
of students with.
Yeah, students who are facing more challenges.
That makes sense.
If schools are competing for students,
Yeah.
the ones with more resources
Mm-mm.
and the higher achieving students,
Mhm.
they might have an advantage, and it just keeps widening the gap
That's
between
a-
the haves and the have-nots.
That's a tough one.
It is. It's really complex.
The analysis also touches on,
Separation of church and state,
oh yeah, that's a big one.
which gets even trickier,
When you start talking about
with more support
I'm
for
with faith-based
both souls.
and the order itself,
Is that
it doesn't explicitly endorse any
particular?
particular religious institutions.
Right.
But if faith-based schools start getting more funding,
That raises questions
could that blur the lines
between religious
between religious instruction?
and public education.
It's a valid concern.
It is. We have to be careful
Yeah, we have to make sure
that any expansion
any expansion
of educational freedom,
respects.
respects the separation of church and state,
Absolutely.
but also
Also,
all schools that are getting public funds.
they have to play by the same rules.
Yeah, same standards of accountability.
And no discrimination.
No discrimination.
Okay, so back to the big question,
The million-dollar question.
the million-dollar question.
How do we
How do we balance this idea of increased choice
increased choice with
equity?
equity and quality?
How do we protect those things?
Yeah, how do we make sure we don't lose sight of that?
It's not an easy question to answer.
It's not.
It sounds
It requires a nuanced approach.
Mm-hmm.
We have to look at the needs of different communities,
Okay.
make sure there's enough
Funding.
enough funding and resources for all schools,
Mm-hmm.
and that we prioritize accountability and oversight.
It's a lot to juggle.
It is. It's a big task.
But finding that balance
That's the key.
to making an education system
Yeah, a system that really works for
that works for all students.
all students.
Let's shift gears for a second
Right.
and talk about
Implementation.
implementation.
The nuts and bolts.
The order gives us these timelines,
Ambitious timelines.
but are they?
Are they realistic?
Yeah, can you really make these kinds of changes
These big changes
that quickly?
in such a short amount of time?
And the analysis doesn't really address that.
It doesn't. That's a really important point.
Implementing something this big,
It's complicated.
it requires
Careful planning.
careful planning
And
from everyone involved.
all the stakeholders
And you have to be realistic
about
about the roadblock.
the challenges you might face.
What about the teachers?
Oh, the teachers.
Yeah, how will this affect them?
That's a good question.
How does this whole school choice thing change their roles,
Their professional development.
their job security?
Yeah, that's something we really need to look at more closely.
Some teachers might be excited
Excited for the opportunity to
try new things,
work in innovative settings.
maybe specialize,
Specialize in something.
but others,
Might have a hard time.
they might struggle to adapt
to these new systems.
or worry about their jobs.
Yeah, their employment opportunities.
We've only just scratched the surface here.
Yeah.
This is a complicated issue.
It is. It's multi-layered.
You've got the philosophical stuff,
The big ideas.
school choice, what does that even mean?
Yeah. What is it really?
And then you've got the practical stuff.
How does it actually play out?
What does it mean for students,
For teachers.
for teachers, for communities?
And that's what makes this,
So interesting.
so fascinating.
That's not about
Yes.
easy answers.
Finding easy
It's
answers.
about having these
Thoughtful.
these thoughtful,
They feel-
nuanced discussions
Make us think.
about a topic that affects all of us.
All of us.
Yeah, what does educational freedom actually mean?
That's a good question.
It is a good question.
And who benefits from all of this?
Who wins?
Who wins and who loses?
We can't just get caught up,
In the slogans,
in the buzzwords,
the rhetoric.
the political rhetoric.
We have to look deeper
We have to look at the substance.
at what these proposals actually mean.
Yeah. What are the long-term consequences
For our schools,
for our education system,
our society.
for our society as a whole? It's like peeling an onion.
Right.
The more you peel,
The more layers you find.
the more complex it gets.
And that's what's so great about learning.
Yeah.
It's about embracing the complexity.
The messiness.
The messiness.
Having those tough
And
conversations
challenge our thinking.
that make us really think critically.
Exactly.
So as we start wrapping up this deep dive,
Okay.
let's leave our listeners with something to think about.
The final thought.
Okay.
The final thought to ponder.
Beyond test scores.
Beyond test scores.
Beyond rankings.
What does it really mean?
What does a successful education actually look like?
In the 21st century? That's a question we all need to be asking, especially as we're figuring out these policy decisions.
Especially now, yeah.
It's about more than just good grades.
Right.
It's about thinking critically, being creative, having empathy.
Oh, yeah. Those soft skills.
Yeah, those skills that help you thrive.
In a world that's constantly changing, it feels like we're moving away from that old model of education.
The one where
you just had to memorize a bunch of facts.
Right, just rote memorization.
Now it's more about
a more well-rounded approach.
Dynamic, holistic.
Exactly. It's about the whole person.
The 21st century needs people who can adapt.
Problem solvers.
Collaborators, people who can think on their feet.
Absolutely.
So how do we make sure that all students have access to that kind of education?
That's the real challenge.
It is. The order touches on this.
But what are the concrete steps?
Yeah, what can we actually do
to make this vision a reality?
That's where the rubber meets the road, right?
It's going to take a lot of different things.
Like what?
Well, we need to make sure all schools have enough funding.
Equal funding.
Yeah, equitable funding.
We've got to support teachers.
Give them the tools they need.
The resources
to be innovative.
To create those learning environments.
Where students can excel.
But also grow as individuals.
Absolutely.
You mentioned supporting teachers. Their role is so important.
It's more important now than ever.
How do we prepare them for this shift?
Well, professional development is key.
Ongoing, right?
Ongoing. They need to keep learning.
Give them chances to collaborate.
Yeah, learn from each other.
Share ideas.
And most importantly,
what's that?
We need to listen to them.
The teachers.
Yeah.
They're the ones in the classroom every day.
They're the ones who know what's really going on.
We can't talk about educational freedom
without talking about teachers.
Without empowering the people who are actually doing the work.
And let's not forget about the students.
Oh, of course not.
Their voices matter too.
What do they want?
What are their dreams?
What kind of learning works best for them?
We have to put their needs first.
At the center of it all.
Exactly. Education isn't just about systems.
It's about people.
Yeah, it's about helping people reach their potential.
Creating a society where everyone has the chance to learn and grow.
To contribute.
We have a responsibility here.
A big one.
To make choices that create a better future for everyone.
For all learners.
This deep dive has been eye-opening.
It really has.
This executive order is complex.
It is. It's multifaceted.
And it could have a huge impact on education in America.
It could change everything.
There are no easy answers.
No, there aren't.
But by having these conversations,
be thinking critically,
by challenging our assumptions,
we can start to figure this out.
And work towards a system that truly serves all students.
That's the goal.
That's what it's all about.
So keep the conversation going.
Yeah, don't stop here.
Talk to your friends, your family,
your colleague,
your community.
Stay engaged.
Advocate for what you believe in.
Your voice matters.
Your perspective matters.
Stay curious.
Stay informed.
And stay involved.
That's how we make a difference.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into educational freedom.
It's been a pleasure.